Hello everyone, welcome to the LoopBack4 Meetup in downtown Toronto. My name is Janny, I'm from the LoopBack development team, and thank you very much for sitting us here to hear us to learn more about the LoopBack4 framework. Today I'm going to use around 15 minutes time to talk about our project LoopBack4, which is the latest new version of our project. And I know some of you have some hands-on experience with LoopBack before, or heard of it before, or just new to LoopBack and want to learn what it is and what does it do. So all kinds of audience are welcome here, and we will have a Q&A section like after my presentation, which takes around 5 minutes. So feel free to ask me any questions in the Q&A section, and then I will hand it over to Binim to give you a tutorial of a code-based tutorial of how to scaffold your LoopBack4 application step by step. So yeah, here's some information of our account. And this is the documentation of our framework. And first, let me quickly go through our schedule today. First, I will introduce some of LoopBack4's background, and then I will use a shopping example to explain how LoopBack helps you to scaffold REST APIs quickly. And the third section would be, other than the comprehensive REST API experience, who else are our target users? And in the last part, I will quickly go through our cloud-native experience, like using LoopBack to build microservices and deploy your app to IBM Cloud. And so first, we are open source project with over 11,000 GitHub stars and over 150,000 downloads per month. And we've attracted a lot of community users to help us maintain this project, adding features and fix bugs and making extensions for us. And LoopBack is a Node.js framework that's written in TypeScript, and it's very famous for building applications in microservices. So does anyone heard of TypeScript or microservice, this concept before, or do you have any experience? Do you want to share some opinion, like what's your experience of using TypeScript or microservice?
TypeScript is just a strongly typed JavaScript.
Yes, exactly.
So everything has a type.
Yeah, exactly. So if you know our older version, which is LoopBack3, if you use LoopBack3 before, you may know that it's written in TypeScript. But our new version is written in, LoopBack3 is written in JavaScript, but our new version is written in TypeScript. The reason is that gentleman said, it is essentially a typed superset of JavaScript, which provides the type safety. And you know that it's always better for the compiler to catch the error than you get the error at runtime. And microservice is a architecture style that breaks down your entire application into smaller services according to different functionalities, so your product is highly testable and maintainable. And so next, I'm going to use a shopping application to explain how easy it is to build REST APIs using LoopBack framework. So just imagine now we are going to build a shopping application. You are going to build a customer management component, and also some components tracks the orders and items in the shopping cart. So in your application, you will have like 3 models, which is user, order history, and shopping cart. And at the backend, you use MongoDB database to store your customer information and the purchased items. And then you use Redis to track the items in your shopping cart. And then you also have a service that recommend the product for users according to their preference. And on the left side, here is a bunch of REST endpoints that your application exposes to external developers or users. So if you build this application with Express and Express middlewares, or Node.js database drivers without LoopBack, what you need to do is first you need to create your abstraction model first for your domain application, and then you need to define this express routes, define each of the routes, and then you need to create connection to your backend database, and then write all the queries to manipulate the data at your backend. But using LoopBack, all these things will be very simple. You just need to click some. You only need to run some CLI commands, and we do all of them for you. So later on, Vinny will show you the detailed tutorial of how to build this application step by step. So here I'm just going to cover the main concept. And so first, you run LoopBack for app. So this is a CLI tool that scaffolds the LoopBack application for you. So first you run LB4 app to create a dummy app with the proper file structures ready for you to add different artifacts. And then you run LoopBack for model to create, for example, the user model, order history, and shopping cart model. So essentially, LoopBack for model is a TypeScript model class. And by running this command, all you need to do is to answer some prompt questions, and then answer some prompt questions that describe the properties in the model. And then we generate everything for you. And the next step is you run LB4 data source to generate a data source that for creating the connection to the backend databases. So all you need to provide is the connection configurations. For example, if you create a MongoDB data source, you can provide the host name, the port, the database name, and then after you create your data source, our framework handles all the connection for you. And the next step is you run LB4 repository to encapsulate your model and data source. So take the model user as an example. A repository means it attaches your model to your data source, but it keeps your model decoupled from the API registry. So a repository is essentially a class which with a bunch of cloud APIs that you can call to manipulate the backend data. So you don't need to learn, for example, you use the MongoDB as your backend database. You don't need to learn the MongoDB query system. You only need to understand the LoopBack query system, and then you can call the repository APIs to manipulate the backend data. And the last step is you run LB4 controller to to expose your endpoints. So the controller actually maps to this side. For example, in the user controller, it has a bunch of APIs that after you run the application, you can use curl or postman to call those endpoints. And also, we also have the CLI to create the service class for you. So by running this command, it scaffolds the very basic service class, and then you can implement the details afterwards. So by creating all these artifacts, our framework handles integrate all of them together, instead of you have to write your own code, like the business logic, and describe your APIs by yourself. And so this is a screenshot of the API Explorer that you will see by running those commands and have your app running. So you can see that, for example, the user's controller has an endpoint which creates a new user, and you can also retrieve the user by its ID. Okay, sure. So yeah, so here you know how LoopBack helps backend developers to create REST APIs very quickly just by running some CLIs. So next is a summarize of what is LoopBack. So giving the example we already went through, you may have some idea of like what LoopBack does. And so LoopBack is essentially a Node.js API creation framework. So if you look at the graph here, it's very similar to the picture I showed in the shopping example. Like on the left side is your API endpoints, and on the right side is the your backend databases that store your data or the services that act as the data transferring layer. And right in the middle is our framework, LoopBack, which is essentially a super middleware that helps backend developers to expose their APIs easily. And also, we have the out-of-box integration with more than 20 popular databases like SQL database like MySQL, Oracle, Postgres, and also NoSQL databases like MongoDB and Cloud and CouchDB. And we have the adapter for services like REST and SOAP. And so now you know that how LoopBack makes backend developers' life easier. And next, I'm going to introduce some features that will benefit the front-end developers. So by having the running application, our framework exposes a complete open API specification file for you. So does anyone know what is Open API or Swagger?
Some standard around API.
Yeah, exactly. So Swagger or Open API is the industry standard to describe your REST APIs, so that so other developers know what your API looks like and what data to what's the input and the return data of your endpoint. So LoopBack also has a module that converts the Open API specification into GraphQL API descriptions for front-end developers to get the GraphQL APIs ready for use. Does anyone know what is GraphQL? Have you heard of GraphQL before? No? So yeah, maybe let me introduce GraphQL a little bit. So GraphQL is actually a module that separates the front-end developers' job with the back-end developers' job. So which means the front-end developers don't have to wait until the back-end developer get the API ready to consume those APIs. And it's also very flexible for front-end developers to make nested queries to retrieve the data. And so this is a picture shows how the GraphQL module works. So first you have your LoopBack for application run here, and then we have an endpoint for you to retrieve the OpenAPI file, and then we convert the OpenAPI specification into the GraphQL API specification, and then you can run this endpoint to see the GraphQL interface here. So for example, this is your backend data, and this is your query. When you run the query, it returns the to-do instance for you. picture is, sorry, I think this picture is a little bit, the first part is missing. I'm not sure why it's all white, but so the my third section is about what you can do with LoopBack. So in my first example, I explained how you can use LoopBack to create your REST APIs and how it helps both the backend developer and front-end developer to to scaffold and consume the APIs easier. And in this section, I would like to introduce what else you can do with LoopBack. So LoopBack is not only created for API users, it's also created for like platform developers and extension developers. So sure. Sorry, there's some size problem. Okay, cool. Carry going. Sorry?
Once you're done, you can go back to that file.
Okay. Cool. Thank you, Billy. So this is the complete picture of our architecture of the framework. So at the very bottom is so we are a Node.js framework, which means at the very bottom is the Node.js environment. And here is our LoopBack core module, which is actually agnostic of the upper layers, like the API layer or the other backend service layer. So our core module has a context module as a central registry to organize your different artifacts, and also have a metadata module that annotate your artifact members, and then we have a boot module that could load your artifacts in different phases and have your app running. What makes our core extensible is our core is written based on the inversion of control and dependency injection. So has anyone heard of like the inversion control or dependency injection before? Or do you know what it is?
I think inversion control or dependency injection is where instead of importing a class that does something inside another class,
yes,
you have one class say, I need an X, I need something, and then at runtime you will inject what it needs.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Out.
Yeah, it's a very popular design concept for extension developers, which means your core application inject the functionalities from outside instead of we hard code all the functionalities in the core application. Yeah, thank you, sir. Yeah. So if you are familiar with like IDEs like or the editors like Eclipse or VS Code, they allow developers to contribute extensions to their core, and dependency injection and inversion of control is the design pattern that makes that happen and makes that work. And we also have the build module, which contains some configurations of TypeScript to get your app run easy, instead of you do the investigation and scaffold the template of TypeScript app by yourself. And we also have the test lab module that get the unit test, acceptance test, integration tests, those test templates ready for you to test your code or your functionalities easier. And based on the and this layer is actually for platform developers, which means you can use LoopBack as you can extend the LoopBack core to make your own framework. And based on the very basic level, we build our REST layers here. So we have our REST server module and the OpenAPI modules that describe the LoopBack APIs using OpenAPI standard, for example. And we also have the HTTP module to create the HTTP connections, those things. And this part is actually what I covered previously. Oh, sorry. I will quickly go through everything. It seems we run out of time. And this part is for extension developers to build to contribute different features based on their own need. And yeah, the last part is compare with our old version, LoopBack 3. In LoopBack 4, we enhanced the experience with cloud native, which we have all the tutorials of like how to deploy your application to Kubernetes on IBM Cloud, and also how to use the Cloud Foundry to deploy your app directly. And by having your app running on IBM Cloud, you can integrate different IBM cloud services like cloud and database or those services in your app. And we also have the community users to contribute the deployment tutorial to PM2 and Nginx, those different containers. And yeah, I think that's pretty much everything from me. And yeah, thanks everyone. And thank you. And this is the link of our product. Feel free to check it after the presentation.